Rolex are well known for building hype. In 2015, they released a rubber strap and people got hugely excited for it. This year, in 2016, is the release of the 116500LN Daytona in stainless steel with the ceramic bezel. If people were excited by the rubber strap, they're going to go absolutely crazy for this. The Daytona's always been a sellout model. It's always been a model that people can't wait to get their hands on. But the question is, now we have it in our hands, now we can see it and feel it, is it worth the hype? So we know from previous reviews that Rolex likes to reuse names, and the name of this watch, the Cosmograph, was previously featured on moon phase models during the 1950s. Chronographs were called chronographs up until 1963, when Rolex moved the tachymeter from the inside of the watch to the outside of the watch, like you see here. That was similar to the 1957 Speedmaster, and that was also the turning point for the name Cosmograph. This came about at the same time as NASA's selection for a watch that they were going to take to the moon as part of the Apollo missions, and the naming Cosmograph obviously has space connotations. Whether that's a coincidence or not, I don't think it is. The Daytona was one of the watches selected by NASA for testing, but ultimately NASA chose the Speedmaster. This meant that Rolex needed to change tack, needed to come up with a different direction for what could have been a space watch, but now had no direction. So they chose motor racing. During the Prohibition in America, bootleggers used tuned-up cars and race drivers to ferry illegal alcohol across the US, and once the Prohibition was lifted, there was nothing for them to do with those cars. So they actually founded NASCAR and started racing those tuned-up stock cars on tracks like Daytona in Florida. The Daytona track and the drivers that raced there was ultimately where Rolex positioned their watch. But before they chose the name Daytona, they actually experimented with the name Le Mans. And there is marketing material for the Cosmograph that shows it being called Le Mans before finally setting on the name Daytona in 1965. So with the Daytona poised towards race car drivers, you'd think it'd become a big success. But that's wrong. The 1960s through to the 1980s, the Daytona was a big flop. Sold in the hundreds. The exotic dialed Paul Newman version, even less. One of the reasons why vintage Daytonas are worth so much these days is because there are hardly any. Rolex couldn't shift any of them. But the quartz crisis that wiped out quite a few other brands and nearly wiped out a few other major brands like Omega was very kind to Rolex, and they came off the back of it doing rather well for themselves. The turning point came in 1988 with the 16520, which had a modified Zenith El Primero movement, which they termed the Caliber 4030. That was the first automatic Rolex chronograph, 19 years after Hoyer's Caliber 11, and it replaced the Valjoux 72, which had been discontinued in 1974. In 2000, the 16520 was updated slightly with an in-house movement to the Caliber 4130, and here it is. This watch was incredibly popular, with waiting lists up to 2 years. But if there was any gripe anyone had about this watch, it was the bezel. Being polished metal, it made the watch look smaller. And in 2007, with Rolex's introduction of the Cerachrome ceramic bezel in the GMT Master 2, everyone's thoughts turned to the Daytona. When was the Ceramic Daytona going to be released? Well, this wasn't actually the first ceramic Daytona that Rolex released. There was one released in 2011, but that was in Everose Gold, the 116515LN. That wasn't quite what everyone wanted. They wanted the stainless steel version, and it wasn't until 2016 that this 116500LN finally arrived. So what's this new ceramic Daytona actually like compared to its older sibling? Well, as you can see, not a huge amount has changed. We still have the screw-down pushers, which were introduced in the 1960s with a 6240. The case is much the same as it was before. It's polished, curved edges, nothing much really has changed there. The dials on the stainless steel version, both available in black and white. Again, you'll be hard pushed to tell the difference. The sub-dials on the newer version are in black versus silver, but everything else is more or less the same. The only real difference is the ceramic bezel, but what a difference it makes. You can see with the polished bezel, the watch shrinks, it looks smaller. In this modern age, bigger watches tend to be favoured, and this black ceramic bezel gives the Daytona a feeling of size, while still maintaining a 40mm case size to keep it comfortable and allow it to slip under a cuff. So there's the black dial as well, which looks like this. As you can see with the black dial, the old and the new dials are even closer, both with silver sub-dials. And again, the ceramic bezel really jumps out, making the watch look more substantial. So what is so special about this ceramic bezel? Well, it's Rolex's ceramic material Cerachrome, a combination of the words ceramic and chrome, which means colour. Obviously there's no colour in this bezel, but there have been with other editions in the GMT Master. The Cerachrom is made by sintering a compound of zirconium, aluminium and oxygen at 1600 degrees Celsius, and this makes it scratch resistant and UV resistant, so the shine and the luster will last a very long time. With that, hardness introduces problems with the manufacturing, such as the finishing, which has to be done with a diamond paste to produce this brilliant polished finish. The numbers around the edge are inlaid with platinum via a physical vapor deposition or PVD process, and the whole lot is made in-house. From the design to the patenting, everything has been done by in-house Rolex scientists and technicians. And for the first time with the Daytona, the ceramic bezel is monoblock. It's not an insert for a bezel, the entire bezel is made of ceramic. As you'd expect, both these watches are incredibly comfortable. The 40mm size and the slender case means that you don't even feel it on your wrist. It's very, very comfortable indeed. The detailing, the quality is all up to Rolex's usual standards. There's no real need to dwell on that because we're all familiar with how good these watches actually are. The price has gone up as you'd expect. The old model RRP'd at around £8,000 before it was discontinued. This is now £9,100, and that's if you can find one. There is a long waiting list for these, and there will be for quite some time to come. Like the old Daytona, it's not going to be easy to get your hands on one of these. So the addition of the ceramic bezel, is it hype? For many, the polished bezel on the previous Daytona made it look small, so for them, this makes the Daytona a viable choice. For all the similarities, the new bezel actually does make a huge difference to the watch. It makes it look more modern, more sleek, more eye-catching without being imposing. Yes, there is the price increase, but the residuals of these watches are strong, particularly while there's a huge waiting list. Prices will stay firm for a long time yet. Rolex has absolutely delivered on a ceramic version of its popular stainless steel Daytona. Whether it's what you're looking for? I guess there's only one way to find out. You'll have to buy one, if you can find one. If you enjoyed this video, then please like and subscribe. If there are any other watches you'd like to see reviewed, let us know in the comments.